Hello class, welcome to week 1, day 5 expectations. In this video we're going to be going over the expectations and then I will be reading the close reading afterwards. So again, if you don't need me to read for you, you can totally skip over that part, but make sure that you guys are listening for the expectations. Alright, day 5 expectations. I want you guys to read the next material as a close reading, underline or highlight important information, write down questions or ways that you've related to the material. We've done plenty of close readings. You guys are probably really good at it right now. So I'm looking for that. That again is on page 10, starts on page 10, looking at this day 5 section all the way up until you get to this number 6 task. After that, after your close reading, I want you to draw a detailed picture of a Mayan man or woman. If you look on Google, you can find this image of a Mayan man, pretty sweet. Or you can do a Mayan queen, also pretty sweet. So I'm looking for either that or that. In addition, I want you to write 2 addition problems using the Mayan number system. It can be a subtraction, it can also be multiplication. But just 2 math problems using the Mayan number system. And then I also want you to create 2 pages of notes on your biography person, which I'm hoping that you're working on, covering their young adulthood. So hopefully everyone knows their person that they are doing, find some information about their young adulthood, and make sure to cite your sources. All of this should be done on a separate piece of paper. In addition, I want you to review and practice movements from mystery class, make sure that you guys are moving, and then 30 minutes or up to 60 of light cardio, such as walking, running, or anything else. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. I need you guys moving. I promise you'll be happier. Plenty of videos for you guys to follow along. Get silly, get weird with it. Just make sure that you guys are moving. I promise that you'll be happier. So yeah, a lot of things to cover for day 5. Again, looking at close reading, a drawing, 2 addition math problems, and then create your notes for your biography person. So a lot going on here. I hope you guys enjoy it, and it should take up quite a bit of time for you guys to get these things done. Alright. This next part is going to be going over the close reading, so if you don't need that read for you, you can skip over it, or you can join me for it, either way. Alright, day 5. What did the Maya look like? The women were probably not more than 4'8" tall, and the men about 5 feet 1 inch tall. Their bodies were strong and sturdy. They had black hair, dark brown eyes, and dark skin. At the base of their spine was a small purplish spot that faded before their 10th birthday. This was a characteristic of Indian groups that trace their prehistoric origins to Northeast Asia. The fold of skin at the corner of their eyes was another common characteristic. The Mayan thought crossed eyes were beautiful. Mothers hung small beads close to their babies between their eyes to encourage the eyes to focus inward. Because they found broad heads and big noses attractive, a mother bound the infant's head between 2 wooden boards in front and back in order to flatten the forehead and emphasize the long line of the nose, making it appear more beautiful. Young men often burn their hair off the front of their heads so the slanting foreheads would stand out even more. The Maya loved jewelry. When children were older, their earlobes, septum, and lips and 1 nostril was pierced so they could wear a variety of ornaments. Adults sometimes filed their teeth to sharp points, and the wealthy inlaid their front teeth with bits of obsidian or jade. This is like the beginning of grills, if you guys know what those are. Tattooing was a common practice. Intricate designs were cut into the skin, and different colors of dyes were rubbed into the cuts. The patterns usually followed the natural curves of the face and body. Men had very little facial hair, and when they did have, they pulled out. They wore their hair in braids wound around the top of their heads with a tail hanging down the back. The women wore their hair long, braided in 2 or 4 braids or hanging down. Both men and women trimmed their hair in front into a fringe like very short bangs. The Maya had very little clothing unless they were a part of the wealthy aristocracy. They lived in a tropical climate, so the weather was never extremely cold. The men wore a simple loincloth, a band of material that went around their waist and between their legs and tucked back into their waist. Some wore deerskin moccasins and a cloak which was thrown over their shoulders. Women wore 2 layers. The outer one was a piece of decorated cloth with the holes cut for the head and arms, and the inner one was a lighter weight version of the same garment. They often wore a shawl over the shoulders as well. The Mayan number system was very advanced, as had already been stated. It was based on the number of 20 instead of 10, as we are used to. Mathematics was an important part of studying astronomy. Unlike the people of the time, the Maya understood not only the concept of zero, which is really important and I think we're taking for granted, but that of a place value. They used only 3 symbols for writing numbers: the picture of a shell for 0, a dot for 1, and a bar for 5. Placement of the 3 symbols was important in designating values higher than 19. Each city had a chief who was chosen from among the upper class. Priests made up the highest class along with the wealthy nobles. Then came the warriors, who captured many enemy prisoners. Below them were the common people. Religion had something to say about every aspect of Mayan life. Often the ruler in chief was also a priest. The priests were the only people who were allowed to know all of the gods and religious rituals. Common people couldn't even go into the temples, but followed the guidance of a priest during religious festivals. The Maya believed that the earth had been destroyed and recreated several times by the gods. They believed the gods were all powerful and that it was important to keep them happy. The gods were connected to nature, and people believed that it was only because the gods kept making the sun shine and the rain fall that life could be kept going from day to day. Natural occurrences of nature, such as a flood or drought, made them worry that the gods were angry. The sun and moon gods were believed to be the father and mother of all the people, and there were many other gods with many different jobs. Sacrifice was a regular part of Mayan worship. They knew the blood was a special part of life, so blood was also a special part of the religious ceremonies. Most ceremonies only required the sacrifice of dogs, birds, or other animals. When the people had a big problem, such as a lack of rain, they made an extra big sacrifice: a person. One way they sacrificed people was to drop them into a deep limestone well, which was believed to be the home of the gods who knew about rainfall. Both the priests and the victims prayed and purified themselves for 60 days before this kind of ceremony. Then the victims were dropped in, along with other valuable offerings for the gods. If the sacrificed victims was still alive at midday, he or she was pulled up out of the well. Everyone wanted to know the messages the gods had sent back for the people with the rescued victim. The Pyramid of the Magician, also known as the Temple of the Dwarf, is in the beautiful Mayan city of Oxmal. It is a pyramidal-shaped temple with 2 rounded ends. Here is a wonderful story about the temple. There once was an old witch who was longing for a son. She was told to get an iguana egg and put it in her house. She did this, and after a while it hatched. Out came a beautiful baby boy. The witch was overjoyed to have a son, and she was a loving and good mother to him. When he was 8 years old, he stopped growing. The witch was perplexed by this, but as he seemed healthy in every other way, she didn't worry. When the dwarf's son grew older, he was wandering in the forest and found a mysterious musical instrument. Everyone said that whoever could play this instrument would become the next king of Oxmal. The dwarf began to play beautiful music on the mysterious instrument, and the people of the city heard it. They said that the dwarf should become king. The current king became angry, because he still wanted to be king. He wasn't about to give up his throne to a dwarf, so he issued a challenge. In one night, the dwarf had to build the tallest, most beautiful pyramid temple in Oxmal. If by chance he actually do this, then 3 bags of coconuts would be broken over his head. If the dwarf could survive this, then the king would have 3 bags of coconuts broken over his own head. That's crazy. The day of the challenge came, and the dwarf built the tallest, most beautiful pyramid temple that have ever been seen in Oxmal. The old witch was worried about the bags of coconuts that were to be broken on her son's heads, and figured out a way to protect him. She made him a special stone cap and covered it with a wig. When the 3 bags of coconuts crashed down on the dwarf's head, he wasn't harmed at all. When the coconuts were broken over the king's head, he died immediately. Then the people rejoiced and welcomed their new king, the witch's dwarf son, who they now respected as a magician. The dwarf king ruled the people wisely for many years. So that's a crazy story. Kind of funny, to be honest. Nobody knows exactly why the Mayan civilization disappeared. There were great cities as old as 600 years, but over a period of 100 years, they all crumbled and vanished as the jungle took over. One theory is that the population increased to the point where there wasn't enough food. This meant that people became malnourished and less resistant to disease. Also, as the nobles grew in number and demanded more and more from the common people, it is likely that the peasants revolted, just as they did in medieval Europe. Of course, not all of the Mayan disappeared, and their culture developed in other places, as some of the survivors traveled to new areas and blended with other groups of people. Eventually, a group of warriors called the Toltec invaded the Yucatan Peninsula, and before long had full control of it. Thus was born a new civilization. When the Spanish invaded Guatemala in 1524, life in the old Mayan region changed dramatically. All right, that is the close reading. Yeah. Thank you for checking out this video, guys. Hope you guys are doing well again. Yeah.